Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that explores financial topics for families and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Planners Alliance. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Planners Alliance may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
Welcome back to the Money Huddle. My name is Michael Baker, and I'm here with Ross Marinell. Ross, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about you? It's almost Halloween.
Not bad.
Are you ready in the Baker household?
We are, well, I guess we are as ready as we are going to be. It looks like the weather is not going to cooperate, but we will make do. What about you guys?
Yeah, we're locked and loaded.
Yeah.
Kids are ready. They've had a test run on a couple trunk or treats. We're good to go.
You've already had a couple trunk or treats?
Well, I say one. I'm sorry, one.
It's like there must be zero candy quotas at your house this year. It's like all the candy for me. This is a part of I did buy some candy, and I have to admit I have already started to eat it, which is not great. Not great for the health plan, but man, I'm a sucker for Reese's Buttercup.
Well, it's been a little while since we had a recording up, so we've got a couple of things I wanted to get rolling real quick. So,
what you got?
So this made headlines a couple weeks ago, but we haven't really had a chance to talk about it. And that is the custody wars between Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, the big custodians in our industry, obviously starting to slash trading fees. So we actually saw trading costs on a couple of platforms actually eliminated. So the charge to trade a stock or ETF on a couple of major platforms is now zero.
Yeah, that's been brewing for a while. I know that TD Ameritrade has had a pretty large platform where we're already charging zero ticket fees for a lot of providers. And I think Schwab, obviously, as well. It's been, there's been a race to zero for, trading costs with a lot of these major platforms. You get innovative groups like Robinhood in the mix. They advertise as free trading. So, I think the neat thing is for investors is that showing that technology is enabling the cost to be an investor, to trade and do things are going down. However, the other part of that is, what I've seen is that could that be incentivizing, bad behavior in that, trading is now basically free. So there's friction. There's no friction now if you want to get in there and just rapidly trade. I can't imagine how many day trading newsletters were birthed out of this new development.
Okay, you teed me up perfectly. So I wanted to read, my favorite social media source, my only passion is Twitter. I mean, it's anti-Facebook. You know this.
Yes.
No. Don't do that.
Don't be looking for Ross on Facebook.
There.
He
Twitter,
is non-existent.
All right, this was great. So this was from Wes Gray, Alpha Architect. Trading costs go to zero. 1, right? 2, data is cheaper and easily available to everyone. Plus, 3, behavior effect. Data increases confidence, but doesn't improve forecasts. So think about that. Trading costs go to zero.
Yeah.
Data is cheaper and easily available to everyone. Behavior effect. Data increases confidence, but doesn't improve forecasts. Equals, in his words, the opportunity to be a terrible investor has never been better in the history of investing.
Oh, I know.
So that's from Wes. Meaning there's less friction. There's less. When we say friction, it means there's less resistance to you going in and making a trade if there's no ticket fee.
Exactly.
You could be the opportunity then to overtrade an account, to be more active than you should. That is to your benefit is easier now because there's just less cost.
Oh, no question. I think I've shared my take on this, and this kind of it's my own little personal theory, but. First part is it shows that a lot of these major platforms that trading wasn't a major source of revenue for them anyway, that they could just overnight decide, nope, it's going to be zero. I mean, one firm does it, and then within a week, everyone else seems to be looking at going to zero, being at zero, or, hey, how do we get to zero? But number 2 is what I think is happening, and this is my 2 cents on it. as technology enables more and more platforms to become integrated, what the next big revenue center for people and big firms like this is going to be is data. No, I mean, what kind of companies, think of a company not like Nike, what would they like to pay for access to the data of who's, moving in and out of their stock, buying, I'm not educated enough to really run it deep down the rabbit hole, but I think that, cost of trading goes to zero. It opens up a huge marketplace of people that cost may have been a barrier in some way for them to be investors. I saw an article the other day that mentioned fractional shares of stock were going to be available. So we are potentially going to open up, which is a great thing, by the way, a marketplace that has not been generally served by being investors. So what kind of data is that going to start providing companies?
Well, I think the big picture here is this idea that if you're not paying for it, then you become the product. So they're no longer going to make revenue on trading, but they are going to make revenue in other ways. That could include your data, so order flow.
Right.
That stuff is real and it's happening. And so they're not benevolent. They're just finding other ways to make money. And in some cases, that is their reliance on how they sell and use your data. So just beware. It's interesting. It's happening. It does, for prudent investors, lower their internal costs, which I think can be very good. Mm-hmm. But it also gives us the opportunity to maybe fall to some negative behavioral traits like overtrading, overconfidence, and just.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I had one more topic I wanted to throw at you.
Let's get it.
So this came about. I was reading a few things from Bezos. So Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, was
we just call him Bezos.
Bezos. Yeah, I mean, we're on first name basis. We're friends. We chat all the time. So I thought this was interesting. So he's asked all the time, right? What do you think is going to change over the next 10 years?
Sure.
And his view is that's the wrong question to ask. Ask me what's not going to change over the next 10 years. I thought about this a little bit, right? Because their mission has always been selection and price, right? At Amazon, even from the very sort of infancy of their company, it was about big selection and low price. And his theory is, that those two things are never going to change in behavior of what consumers want.
No.
Whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now. And so I wanted to relate this back to retirement planning and retirement readiness.
Gotcha.
Because we often focus on the uncertainty of what is going to happen, what is going to change in our lives that we are unprepared for, that's new, that's different.
Yeah.
Versus what are the things that we are confident will not change over the next 10, 15 years.
I see your point.
So a few things that I thought, all right, let's talk, if we're just talking retirement planning and investing in money, a few things that could change. Well, cost of trading could be changed. The platforms at which we trade are changing.
Right. Custodians. Right? Exactly.
I thought too, just kind of funny, like the currency that the way that we kind of transfer money, we're already kind of becoming cashless.
In a lot of ways. Yeah.
And so it's just, how does that change? But then also, what are some things that we believe to be consistent that won't change over this period of time? And so I had a couple I want to get your feedback on.
Okay.
So the first one I thought of was, if you're working with a financial professional, you still want, at the very basic sort of level, you want to have an advocate that knows you personally. How you communicate might be different.
Right.
It may not be face-to-face. It may not be in the office or on the conference table. It could be video conferencing. It could be more the other forms of communication.
Sure.
But do you still want to have, is that ever going to change? That you want somebody who knows you, who knows what you want to achieve, who knows what your goals are, who knows what your lifestyle you want to have. Is that ever going to change?
I don't think so. And the closest... Obviously, if I could unzip myself from what we do every day and, our relationships with the folks that we serve, what the closest thing I can think of that I've had it recently happening to me is I've been going through this process of refinance on my home, and it has been The biggest nightmare I have, I first of all, I feel completely powerless. Like I'm a results driven person. I'm like, what can I do? How can I help? What do you need? And I did all of that stuff weeks ago. I mean, we're probably in the atmosphere we're talking months. And, they call me. Well, actually, they don't even call me. They call me when they need something like, hey, we need this now. And then I don't hear from them for like 2 weeks. And then they call me and they need something. I'm not getting any of like hey, Mr. Baker, we know it's taken a long time. Just wanted you to know we're on top of it. We're a little bit behind. No personal touch.
So mortgage lending,
I feel like I am literally, customer number 1,127.
You are. You're just a file on someone's desk. So, all right. So this is my point, right?
Exactly.
You want to have a personal relation. You want somebody with that entity to know who you are, to know you personally.
I've got a person's name on all of my documents, but that we have zero relationship.
Okay.
Zero.
So that's a good point. So that personal relationship of somebody knowing you, especially when we're talking about your life savings, the retirement income you need to fund your lifestyle.
Well, this is actually a really good point too, because now that I'm thinking about it, there are a lot of times that we'll meet with people here in the office that they've had their money invested with a certain group or at a certain custodian for a long period of time, and they'll come in and bring their statements in, and they'll either be a person's name on the statement, and they'll say, yeah, I don't even know that person because the person that I started with is no longer there, or the person that I started with moved on, and they were just assigned like a new person that they don't have a relationship with, or worse, it'll basically just say the name of the institution, meaning it's like a house account, that it's there, but I mean, no one who's minding that. And that is, to me, is such a disservice to those people that just have their money. Now, to be fair, the clients a lot of times think, oh, my money's here. Somebody's taking a look at it. But the truth is like what you're talking about, the stickiness of it is if there's a personal relationship there, hey, I can call and I'm going to talk to Ross because Ross knows me. He knows my situation. He knows what's going on. We've been working on this plan for a while versus you call an 800 number and who's going to pick up the phone that day?
Right. Okay. So I had one more.
Okay.
I have a few more.
Let's go.
So things that are not going to change over the next 10 years for someone preparing for and entering retirement. If you're working with a professional, receiving advice from an investment advisor that has a fiduciary standard of care to uphold to you when delivering those recommendations versus the alternative of just a sort of brokerage relationship where you have a suitability standard. I think once you kind of eclipse that level and you get to where you're working with a professional that does have that requirement to uphold, I can't imagine you would ever want to go back to a lesser standard of care. I can't think of a reason why you would.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that this is a complex topic. It's not. It's simple, but it's not fully easy to understand. And the reason being is that I am not a fan of overregulation. I feel like our industry is extremely regulated, and most of the stuff that gets proposed is heavy-handed when there's simple things that can be done to make it much more plain for folks to understand who's who in our business. I think a challenge is for a lot of clients is not knowing who's actually supposed to be held to a fiduciary standard and who isn't. But I agree with you in that once clients understand the difference and they experience the difference, they are not going to want to go back to just a suitability or a transaction-based relationship.
Something else I was thinking about too is this idea that something that's not going to change is self-reliance for financial security. And what I mean by that is we're becoming, as individuals, more and more responsible for saving for and providing our own retirement income.
More and more.
I am specifically talking about the reduction of people who have pensions.
Oh, yeah.
Where the savings and the income is somewhat provided for, done for them, even though they may be contributing to it. The investment mix, the income that it produces is largely based on the plan itself. And we are becoming more and more self-reliant. So we have to provide our own resources. So that means saving in retirement plans, saving in non-qualified accounts, getting yourself ready
Sure.
for retirement, because there really are not a lot of other areas that who else is going to step in and provide retirement income. This is really the first wave generation right now retiring that is doing it largely on their own, and that's not going to change.
It's not going to change, and I think that anyone who would be listening would do themselves a great justice by paying attention to the types of results that a lot of these baby boomers are having, because they've been left to, it's been on them. Hey, you're not going to have a traditional pension. You're going to have a 401k. And all those responsibilities, saving for your retirement, raising a family, paying for health care, paying for college. That's largely been a function of how well you've been able to steward your resources over a 20, 25, 30-year period. Because let's be real honest. Most of us can get motivated and do just about anything for a short period of time, right? I can get motivated. Hey, I want a new health kick. Boom, I'm motivated. I can go for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I'm going to get my finances in order. I'm going to start tracking my budget. I'm going to start diligently doing this, and I can do that for 2 months, 3 months. But when you start talking about years on years, 5 years on 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, decades worth of compounding of habits, that becomes challenging, because whether we realize it or not, we tend to revert to whatever our default is. So if we're not successfully moving our defaults better and better and increasing and adjusting those habits and things that we do, what ends up happening is you wake up one day and you're 55 and you're like, oh my gosh, I better hit the gas pedal, because I'm not ready to retire when I, quote, think I'm supposed to retire. So I agree with that. Self-reliance is huge, and technology should be a tool that helps us do that, but it shouldn't be the tool that we think is going to do it for us.
Right. So, okay, I have a couple more. I want to kind of pair them together. So something that's not going to change. A saver's mentality and frugality of being able to live a comfortable lifestyle, but sort of efficiently.
Yep.
Right? So we're not overspending or overreaching on whether it's just lifestyle creep. We get a little carried away with our spending or gifting, whatever it might be, right? Savings and frugality. We call this kind of lifestyle alpha, right? Meaning
lifestyle alpha.
I like that. I like that phrase.
It's a t-shirt right there.
Versus we could try and sort of outrun expenses through an investment strategy. However, the investment strategy, the market performance is unpredictable.
Right.
It can work to your favor, or it could work against you.
Mm-hmm.
But saving and maintaining a saver's mentality and being a little bit more frugal during retirement is still one of the best, most predictable ways to financial security.
Well, this is where I truly believe that, going back to the very beginning, having a personal relationship with an advisor, because you want an advisor that's going to be able to know you as a person and be able to identify and talk to you on that level. They're going to have that level of trust, because the person on the phone, on the 800 number that you don't know, isn't going to be able to have a heart-to-heart with you about your financial bottom line. That's just the reality of it. But I also think there are times when it can make sense to adjust a plan to say, hey, you know what? Here's what I think. We would like to spend a little bit more money earlier in our retirement, because we know we're going to be healthy. We know we're going to be able to go and do things. We expect to spend less, and you adjust and adapt a plan accordingly. Obviously, there are things that are unknown. Obviously, there are things that come up that are unexpected that you may have to adapt to. But having a plan that's flexible enough to change is a great tool. Just going at it with this straight line approach is like, because we've seen this. Mm-hmm. Well, we've saved X dollars, and if I could just get Y return, then I should be fine. And we know as investors that portfolios that can be designed to attain an average rate of return. It's over a specific time period.
Right.
Averages doesn't mean that's going to happen every single year.
So think about this as it relates to let's call it like your burn rate, right? How much income do you need to fund your lifestyle? if you can keep it a little closer to the vest, let's say you have a savings goal, you want to generate $60,000 of income off your portfolio. Let's just use a 4% withdrawal rate.
Sure.
We'll just keep it simple. The 4% rule has been talked about 1,000 times.
1,001.
1,001, yeah. So we're catching one more. So let's say, for example, you wanted $60,000 off your portfolio. Well, that means you need to save $1.5 million. That's just the math of it, right?
Starting
That's
out.
the withdrawal. Starting out, $60,000 a year, you increase it for inflation, you probably need to save $1.5 million. But let's say you can pare down and you only need $40,000 off your portfolio. Mm-hmm. Well, now your savings target is $1 million. I mean, just think about that. You had to save, we're talking about $500,000 less in total savings.
Right.
But the trade-off is you're just going to spend a little less each year. So that, I mean, it can make a dynamic difference in how much you have to save to kind of fund and meet your lifestyle.
And I think that there are some great ways to design plans for people that work differently. And that's the key. I think that people should take away is that there are many different ways that are backed by research to create retirement income planning strategies. It's not a one size fits all. So you shouldn't be trying to get the one size fits all solution. You should be trying to actively participate and plan for hey, what's the best plan for us? And let's do that one, right?
So let's say I'm on the savings and frugality part. I've got the savings part down. That's easy. Yeah. Frugality, that's hard.
It's very hard.
I'm practicing and it's hard. So that's a behavioral component and it really takes practice.
No doubt.
All right. So to go along with that, then something that's not going to change is people want options. That is, where we go, who we spend time with, what we do. And that, in my view, comes from your savings. This is the benefit of having a deep portfolio, a good selection of assets that you kind of get to pick and choose from where you want to draw some income from and spend. And that really is what creates the options.
No question. I mean, obviously, we've been in enough planning meetings and had enough conversations about money. It's that, what did Biggie Smalls say? More money, more problems. More money, more options. More, better financial habits, better savings. Habits built over time. That's going to give you more options, and it's hard for some folks to understand that. Having a good grasp on, like what you said, your burn rate, it helps you understand how all the pieces fit together, because it's very easy, I think, sometimes for folks to look at what's on the number on the statement, say, well, why can't I just go I see the money right there, but they don't understand how certain lifestyle things they do. It's well, you're also hiring a team like us to try to plan for you for the next 25 years. So it's kind of a big deal. But I agree with all your points. I think it's great.
So, we never know. We don't know what's going to change. Bitcoin could become the world currency, Michael. You never know. But I know I'm still going to need money.
Don't do that.
I'm teasing. Do that. All right, what else you got for us?
All right, so two quick things. And I would love to get your take on this, and anyone listening. This is fresh out of the oven, but the NC2A apparently has cleared the way for college athletes to begin profiting from their name, image, and likeness, which could mean that some of these players that we see consistently playing basketball, football, that are household names that are amateur athletes could start cashing in. Right. On that. What do you think about that? Like it? Don't like it?
I don't know what's the argument against it? The reality is these players that are very talented, they create a lot of revenue for the schools.
Right.
The schools make a lot of money from football, TV rights, stadium charges, and concessions. And what's the harm really in allowing a young athlete to benefit from their likeness and earn some income? The concern I would have is how they twist, and what's the flip side to that?
Sure.
How do the schools take advantage of it? What do they do? What do the boosters do to recruit and make it a little slimy?
Yeah, that is actually an interesting point, because if compensation becomes a thing, you have to think that a school like UCLA or USC is in the catbird seat because they're in Los Angeles. They're literally in like the entertainment capital of the world. Those two universities are right there. And so you're thinking like agents, endorsement deals, opportunities. Now, I don't know how this thing will play itself out. It could be like, hey, look, if your image and likeness is used for anything, because we do see a lot of these athletes on the cover of magazines, on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and presumably they're not being paid a dime for any of this stuff. So I do understand that. What I'm concerned with, though, is this is just going to open up a whole host of slimy folks getting their hooks into these kids at a younger age.
Can't you see someone going after the top football recruit? Hey, we're going to use your likeness. We're going to pay you $15 million to put your likeness on our shirts, T-shirt, whatever.
Right.
And I don't know how it's going to be abused. I would rather let's get the compensation above board. Let's let these young athletes that are very marketable, that have a marketable talent, to make an income. But let's not do it behind.
Well, I think
doors.
I bring that up because I think that if you are blue chip athlete that's getting recruited, or your kids, or your kids, you think your kids might be a blue chip athlete, all the more reason to start instilling financial habits into them at an early age and getting their head on their shoulders. Because we've already talked about ad nauseum on the podcast here about how these kids are 18 years old, never made a significant financial decision in their life, but yet they're being asked to sign on the dotted line for all these student loans and go into debt to go to school. Now we're going to open up these kids that may be getting a great opportunity to go to school on scholarship, but now they're going to get all this additional money. Who is that going to introduce it to your kids?
Thing too, there's probably a good majority of the college athletes that could benefit from this type of compensation that may never go pro. This could be a way to help them pay student loan debt, to help
possibly.
So, hey, look, I'm certainly not against it. I can't think of a reason why we shouldn't let these young men and women make some money.
Yeah, I got one more for you in the last few minutes here. So there was a study just came out, at least the article just came out this week from Pew Research Center. And the headline of the article says, majority of Americans say parents are doing too much for their young adult children. The study shows that most say young adults should be financially independent by age 62. So 64% of the people polled said that adults should be financially independent at age 62. But 24% of the young adults who are only 24% are actually financially independent by age 22.
Okay, 22.
Yeah.
I thought you said 62.
No, 22.
All right, so financially independent at 22. That's interesting. Some kids may not be through college yet. So that's probably a challenge. Are parents doing too much for young children?
Okay. So this needs full disclosure here. So it says here, it says the quote, financially independent refers to adults with income of at least 150% of the poverty level for a one-person household, or 19,128, based on the census poverty line for 2018. So doesn't look like they're setting the bar too high here to be financially independent. But that's, I think what this goes back to is kind of what we've been seeing in the trend is a lot of kids that are graduating and they're not quite ready. They either can't get a job or they're underemployed. They have to service student loans, and a lot of them are still leaning on mom and dad, possibly to move back in temporarily, or leaning on mom and dad to help with expenses. How does that translate over to mom and dad who are trying to raise their kid, but also either wanting to retire or in retirement?
Well, this is we often refer to this as the sandwich generation. So these sort of near retirees now in their late 50s, 60s that are finding themselves potentially caring for either financially or physically for aging parents.
Exactly.
Or finding themselves still financially caring for young children. Mm-hmm. And this is the sandwich generation. And folks in this group are getting pulled both ways because their time, their energy, physical and their financial efforts are being, in some cases spread across three generations, right? And it is a real challenge. And it one of the most, I think, comforting scenarios for folks that are about to retire is knowing that their children are financially secure.
Right.
It makes that such a relief.
It's one of the questions we ask everyone, like, how are your kids doing? I mean,
It's every first consultation is, do you foresee yourself needing to financially support aging parents or children? And the answer to that often, relates back to that individual's comfort level in security and taking that.
Well, I thought that was an interesting survey. I'll post the link to the article in the notes for the show. So if folks want to go read it, but it does kind of affirm some of the things that we've talked about often is the younger generations are still leaning on their parents. What kind of long-term implications does that have on folks for retirement? So at any rate, thanks for listening.
Awesome. Good to be back.
It's great to be back. We'll be on a regular schedule here moving into the holiday season. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our email address is themoneyhuddle@vcplanning.com, themoneyhuddle@vcplanning.com, or you can find us on Facebook. And we'll talk to you next time.